Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the latest developments from the front line, starting out in the Zaporizhzhia front, where here over the past 24 hours the Ukrainian forces have continuously been attacking both in the western part of Orikhiv by Lobkove and Pyatatki. They have been trying some offensive operations in this area. There's also been some in the north of Robotyne and to the south of Novodanilivka. Here in this area the general fighting now consists of the Ukrainians sending more and more troops and equipment closer to the front as they are building up their forces for a potential breakthrough, as they will try to gather enough forces to actually launch a significant offensive. But so far, whenever they try to send more troops and more equipment to the front, the Russians just intensified their artillery strikes to inflict as many casualties as possible prior to their offensive push. As for the Staromayorsk area, fighting also continues here as the Ukrainians are insistent on holding on to the village of Staromayorsk, so they are not retreating from it, and the Russian forces are continuously shelling at their positions from the positions to the south of the village, as they are continuously shelling the positions within Staromayorsk, as I showcased in my previous video, where there is constant shelling in the village. So generally, taking a look at the developments by the front line in the Zaporizhzhia front, there is constantly heavy fighting throughout the whole area, and there's a lot of footage coming from Robotyne over the past 24 hours. First off, we have this video here of Lancet drones hitting Ukrainian positions and armored vehicles throughout the Robotyne front. Then we have this video recorded from the Ukrainian perspective as they drive through a graveyard of burned armored vehicles by the Robotyne area. Whether this is old or new graveyards, I'm not sure, so I won't be adding this to additional losses, but it looks like there's the Leopard 2DR, which is the mine clearing one, and so on. So there's generally important equipment located within this graveyard. Then we also have this video here, which is a 5-minute long video where a Russian armored vehicle drives to the front to save some of its fellow soldiers under fire, constant artillery fire by Ukrainian forces, and it turns out, and in the end of the video, the Russians managed to go out of the front. They managed to retreat and retrieve these soldiers from the fire and managed to escape and withdraw to the back line. So this Russian armored vehicle managed to successfully deliver the infantry which was stuck by the front under heavy fire to the back line and saving them. So looking from the latest developments throughout the front line, it seems that the month of August is definitely going to be the one with the heaviest fighting so far throughout the summer, both in the sense that August should be warmer and have less rain than June and July, but also the fact that everything that has happened through June and July are adding up to a now main event in comparison to what we have seen so far. Both the Ukrainians and the Russians are planning something big. The Ukrainians are going to be doing their main push. The Russians are possibly going to do their own thing. We'll have to wait and see, but there is a lot of developments on the international front, of which there is reports from the Polish government that 2 Belarusian helicopters, an Mi-8 and an Mi-24, managed to enter the Polish airspace for 4.5 kilometers before it retreated out of the Polish territory. The Polish claim this is most likely due to an accident during the Belarusian training, and that they didn't detect these helicopters by radar due to the fact that they were flying low. But they are using this as a reason to further fortify their positions by the front line, sending more troops to the border between Belarus and Poland, as well as Poland and Russia, which is the Kaliningrad area. So generally there is some heightened tensions in this area, especially because the Baltics and Poland are not happy with the presence of the Wagner forces in Belarus. And when we talk about Wagner forces, this is where things gets very interesting, because according to a lot of different things, mainly Remy Lind, he's trying to hype this up. He's claiming something is brewing, and then follows this with a report from the Linda Thomas Greenfield, which is the US permanent representative to the United Nations, responded to a question about possible action against Poland by Wagner. And then she says, any attack by the Wagner PMC will be considered an attack by the Russian government. So there's this fear that Russia would use the Wagner to attack these Western countries, these NATO countries, and then use the excuse that Wagner is not a Russian army, it is a separate entity. But here Linda is shutting it down by saying, if Wagner does something, we consider it to be Russia. Then there's also this report by Russian soldiers. There is information that the Wagner group will return to the front in the very near future. Where, when, and how, we cannot know. The detachments are buying UAVs and are preparing in every way to return to the front, where this in time the musicians will enchant. Do you have any preferences? They ask. So essentially, there's reports that the Wagner soldiers are preparing their final preparations before entering the war again. Remy always claims somewhere around August 5th. So again, August is going to be the month where the most happens in the Ukraine war, especially throughout this year, but possibly from the start until now, this will be the major event. Also, due to the fact that Ukraine's Independence Day annual celebration is on August 24th. So we have to see the Ukrainians have something planned for that time. Maybe the Russians have as well, but usually it's the Ukrainians who play with these anniversaries and dates, because they're doing a lot of PR things, which these things are great for PR. But generally what we're seeing is that there's a major buildup in intensity as well as the potential of both armies as we walk into the August month. Moving back to the front, we also see that throughout the front line, heavy fighting continues, not just in the Zaporizhzhia area, but also by the Marinka area. Fighting continues over the city. There's fighting south of Krasnohorivka, in the area west of Pisky by Nevelske. The Ukrainians made some minor counterattack and pushed and expanded the gray zone in between the Russian positions and the Ukrainians. Fighting continues to the north of Vodiane, in between Severne and Vodiane, as the Russians had managed to recapture the fortifications and are now fighting in the open fields, artillery battles mainly. Fighting continues to the northeast of Avdiivka by Kamyanka, where heavy fighting continues here as well. We also see fighting throughout the whole area between Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Here it is mainly artillery and not a lot of physical contact. As for the Bakhmut area, fighting continues over Klishivka and Derivka and Kurdyamivka, but the Ukrainians are so far not seeing any advancements. This is one of the few times where on the first day of the month there's been no advancements whatsoever across the whole front, and this is in part due to the fact that both sides are heavily fighting a battle of attrition right now. Both sides are committing a lot to the front lines, which means that there's little to be gained of territory due to the heavy concentration of troops on both sides. There is this article by Politico. It claims that the Ukrainians are concentrating 150,000 troops committed to the operation across the three axes of attack. And this is a significant number, especially for the incremental gains they have had on the different parts of the front. And they are not kidding when they say incremental gains, because let's take a second to compare Wagner's process through 2 months of fighting by Bakhmut with Ukraine's progress with 2 months of fighting around Bakhmut. And we can see that there is a major difference. You could say, well, the main push is centered around the Zaporizhzhia front. But even here, if we compare the two, the Russian or Wagner advances by Bakhmut seems to be larger, or at the very least more capable than what we have seen the Ukrainians, in comparison to the fact that Ukraine is using 150,000 compared to Wagner having a maximum of 50,000. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.